Good afternoon and welcome to Chase on the Lake and the Minnesota Turkey Growers Association education session. As a courtesy to others, please turn your mobile phones to a vibrate or silent position before we get started with the educational session. Our first guest speaker today is speaking on long-term care. Our speaker is Leslie Martins. As a child, Leslie Martins watched with great respect as her uncle spent 30 years providing care to his brother, who struggled with progressive multiple sclerosis. As often happens, with the caregiver's health declined and the uncle with MS outlived his brother. The placement of Leslie's surviving uncle in a long-term care facility was traumatic for the entire family. As a young adult, Leslie was hired to help a neighbor care for his wife, who was wheelchair-bound to polio. She understands that families rally around their loved one, but often need assistance from others. She knows how devastating the costs of long-term care can be. Impacted by these experiences, Leslie attended St. Olaf College in Northfield, where she earned a bachelor's degree in nursing. She worked as a physical rehabilitation nurse in Minneapolis Hospital and then became director of nursing at a long-term care facility. These experiences led to a career transition when she became a long-term care specialist. She joined Newman Long-Term Care in 2006. She assists couples, families, business owners, employers, and employees in training for and managing the personal and financial risks of long-term care. Leslie welcomes your interest in learning how you can protect your financial future. Using an educational approach, she is happy to walk you through the decision-making process of long-term care planning. Leslie is a member of the American Association for Long-Term Care Insurance and has earned the Certified in Long-Term Care Professional designation. She has twice been named the leading long-term care insurance specialist in Minnesota. I'd like you to give a warm welcome to Leslie.
Hello. I wasn't sure, but I thought there might be 100 people here, and I was worried that my topic was going to scare people away, so maybe it did, I'm not sure. But I wanted to be clear about, I thought on the agenda it looked a little confusing, and it looked like I was going to come up here and talk about long-term care, and maybe talk about how to take care of people, which I totally know how to do, how to take care of people in long-term care. But what I'm here to talk about, to be clear, is long-term care planning. So I'm at a firm called Newman Long-Term Care, and we're situated out of Richfield, Minnesota. And every day I talk to people about what's your plan for long-term care, and we talk about the family and why would you want to plan for long-term care, and have you ever thought about it, and where are you coming from on this. And I applaud people that will meet with me to talk about this topic. So my background with this nursing background is that I loved what I did. I grew up going to nursing homes. We have a lot of chronic illnesses in my family, unfortunately. So I was telling the ladies at the back table that I did grow up going to nursing homes and visiting people, watching my uncle take care of his brother with multiple sclerosis on the family farm. My younger grandmother was an LPN in a nursing home and took care of my older grandmother on my dad's side, and we just it was just a logical thing that I might want to do as a nurse. So I started out doing rehab nursing and got into long-term care, and I was doing that for 10 years. And then I had twin boys, and I didn't know what hit me, and I thought I was going to go back and work as this director of nursing and never sleep and take care of these kids. So I stayed home until they were first graders, and then at that point long-term care insurance was getting to be new and well known in the insurance world. And I thought to myself, I could do that, and I would know way more about long-term care than any of those insurance agents. And all I'd have to do was learn about insurance. So I did that, and so I've been doing this for almost 17 years now, and come at this probably with more of a nursing perspective than an insurance agent perspective, but that's kind of what I do now is represent. I'm at a brokerage firm, represent a lot of different carriers. And so I'm not here to like sell you long-term care insurance or anything like that. I realize that many people in this room maybe have looked into it and own it. Maybe they've looked into it and ruled it out. Maybe your parents are needing care and you're seeing how it works and how you file a claim. I mean, everyone I know is in different shoes regarding long-term care planning. But, you know, the problem exists that we are living longer than ever. And we all know that the longer a person lives, the more likely they need care. And, you know, I didn't bring a PowerPoint. I just feel like this is such a personal topic. And I just like to talk about it, you know, more like I'm with you across the kitchen table in a way. But if you want a few statistics thrown out, if you have achieved age 65 in our country right now, you do have a 70% chance of needing some sort of long-term care before you leave this world. And when I talk about long-term care, I'm not just talking about the nursing home, although I did start talking about that, but I'm talking about home health care, assisted living, adult daycare, and then the nursing home and hospice. And so we're usually not healthy one day, gone the next. Who knows what we're going to need? I'm not up here to tell you you're going to need long-term care. I don't know that any more than you do. But if there's a 70% chance that you are going to need care, then maybe it's something you should learn a little bit more about as far as that risk to your overall financial plan, the risk to your farm, perhaps. And so I have really interesting we work with farmers a lot, and I'm very proud of farmers. I find that when I meet with people in their 50s and 60s who are farmers, many times it's because their folks own long-term care insurance and they're on claim, and they're receiving the benefits from their policy. So we have done this case study, which you'll find in the middle of your table, and you can take it or leave it, but it's there for you to know. So I want to talk a little bit about if a person owns long-term care insurance and they're a business owner, which many of you are, you can deduct premiums through the farm business, or or any business if you're a business owner, and that's not on that sheet necessarily, although I guess it is in the middle of the sheet. So it talks about, okay, if you own a business and you can deduct premiums, it depends on if you're a C Corp or an S Corp, a sole proprietor, as to how much premium you can deduct. But many people don't know that as business owners, and when they do, maybe it's more of a business decision to have a plan and pay premiums than it is more of an emotional decision. But I wanted you to know that, and there's a great case study on there. And the back of the sheet tells you what are some of the current costs of care, in case you don't know. And what it doesn't tell you is the projected cost of care. So if you're planning for long-term care, knowing that it's a high risk, you look at this and you hope you never need care, and you hope you never need to pay for it. But with that high of a risk of probably needing care and having to pay for it somehow, it's always good to get educated so you can make an educated decision, and you're not trying to figure things out in crisis mode when you need care. So in the back of that sheet, the average cost of care is listed in the various settings, and the projected cost of care on those pieces of paper you could write on the bottom if you wanted, but the projected cost of care is supposed to triple over the next 20 years and quadruple over the next 30. So if that projection is correct, which is based on past growth in the cost of care, it's not based on the low inflation rates, then it's something to figure out as to, okay, what's my plan? What's my plan? Maybe my plan is to self-insure. Maybe my plan is to have a policy that's going to cut my bills in half and I pay the other half. Maybe I like the idea of a combination product. We're working more and more with life insurance products that have long-term care insurance wrapped into them. And we work with annuities that have long-term care insurance wrapped into them. But I'm really not here so much to talk about the product as much as the problem. So when I talk about long-term care, you know what settings I'm talking about. You know the risks, at this point that I told you about. Then I always ask people, you know, who are your potential caregivers in your life if you need care? And to what extent do you want them to be caregivers? And are you going to pay them? Or is your daughter your plan? And does she know it? So there are many different ways, as we know, to skin a cat. There are many ways to address the issue, but the problem is that we're going to probably live a long life, and the longer we live, we get frail. And when you're frail, you need some help. And so what's your plan? And so potential caregivers in our lives might be our spouses. And then we have to consider their health. And so when I talk to couples who buy long-term care or figure this plan out differently than someone who's single, everybody has their reasons that they look into this. But we're probably, if you have a spouse, we're probably trying to protect the lifestyle of the healthy spouse, whoever that's going to be. And if there's a plan in place, and you've analyzed this with your spouse, and your kids know what your plan is, and now your spouse has to kick in and be your caregiver, perhaps, or you the opposite. Here's this plan, and we know what we're going to do. We've got a plan. Here's how we're going to pay for it. And my mother right now is on claim. She got remarried in her 70s. His health went down the tubes year 2 of their marriage. She became a caregiver as this bride of 2 years. And it really went on and affected her health. And my brother and I tried to get her to hire help, and she wouldn't do it. And so last July, her health just tanked. And so now he has to go to memory care, and he's spending $10,500 a month. And she's in assisted living, and we're hiring care. We moved her to a 1-bedroom from the 2-bedroom, you know. And it was all crisis mode, but we at least had a plan. And as far as how to pay for this. And so she's spending $6,100 a month on her care in assisted living because we're hiring so much care, trying not to have her go to a nursing home because she doesn't want to go there. And as long as we can hire enough care from home health agencies, bringing this person in and that person in on top of the assisted living, she can stay there. So anyway, my point is, the family dynamics around long-term care can be really tricky because you might have some kids that are financially doing fine and some that aren't, and they're all trying to figure out your care, and perhaps they will make different decisions based on their own financial situation. And so now my brother and I are on this camp, and his 3 kids are over here in this camp, and what I totally saw is what I talk to people about. But it's true that because he had long-term care insurance and my mother had long-term care insurance, these 2 opposite families are still talking to each other. Because I know that if that wasn't the case, his kids would have wanted us to make different decisions about our mother's care and vice versa, and it would have gotten very sticky about finances. And here's another little aside. So people that have a prenup mistakenly think that that's a firewall if you need long-term care. So if any of you have done a prenup or know friends that did a prenup with a second marriage, that's great, and it works for people that then get divorced or pass away. But if people are married, they have combined assets in the state of Minnesota. And combined assets means combined assets. It doesn't mean 50% go here and you get to keep the other 50 for you. So we'll talk about that a little bit too. But that's really a niche that I'm learning a lot about. So I go out and talk to financial advisors, estate planning attorneys, and CPAs, as you can imagine. They're the people with the relationship. And I'm the person that just comes in and plugs the one hole for their overall financial plan. So what you need to know in trying to figure all this out is, first of all, let's think about it and learn about it, and know that there are not a lot of ways to pay for long-term care. You're either going to pay out of your pocket with your savings and investments. Our old farm piece said, it was a little more blatant. It said, is your plan, are you going to sell an acre a month to pay for your long-term care? So we had a farm piece that we've toned down a bit. But you're either going to pay out of your pocket or with your with long-term care insurance. There's Medicare out there for people, as you know, some of you know, age 65, you can go on Medicare. The purpose of it is to replace your health insurance. And neither your health insurance nor Medicare is set up to pay for long-term care. It's all about acute care, hospitalization, doctor visits, meds, medications. But if you need long-term care, Medicare is not going to pay. There's a little window of opportunity under Part A where you're in the hospital for 3 days and 3 nights, go to a nursing home to rehab, and maybe some of you have experienced this with family members. Then Medicare will pay 20 days in full, and perhaps up to 100 days. The last 80, you pay a copay. So Medicare is all about get you better, get you home, rehab, and acute care. So that's not really a payer for long-term care. And then there's medical assistance, and that's the safety net for people that run out of money paying for care. So obviously I don't know anything about your assets, but it might cost you a lot of money to go on medical assistance if you have to spend down, which you do. You spend and pay for care out of pocket, and then when you have impoverished yourself down to $3,000, then you can apply for medical assistance. So there aren't a really, whatever we think about this politically, our government's not going to take care of us when we need long-term care. So, unless we become impoverished, okay? So, when people look at a plan, they try to figure out, what's my family history? What's the best way to make a plan? Do I need an unlimited plan? Do I need a 3-year plan? What do I do? And so premiums are based on age and your gender. Females pay higher premiums than men of the same age now, because statistically women live longer, and the longer a person lives, the more likely they need care. So anyway, premiums are all across the board, and you get to be quite in charge of your premiums depending on how you design your policy. I'm going to grab my piece of paper here just a minute. Table, this piece I like, and it's very generic, big picture stuff. And you can, I call it good Friday night reading material. You can read it later. But it's just basic information, and you can share it with your spouse, and it just piques a little interest as to what are we talking about, and what's the risk, and if I did buy insurance, how would I put the plan together, etc. And then a few scenarios on ways to do that. And then the last page does talk about something that I don't know if many of you know about, but these hybrid products that are coming out are a combination of either life insurance, like I said earlier, with that tax-qualified long-term care insurance. And with those policies, if you use it to pay for care, it draws against the death benefit. So if you purchase that, you don't buy it for the reasons people buy life insurance. You buy it for the reasons people buy long-term care insurance, to protect the family, not burden the kids, give permission to the spouse to hire help readily. All these different reasons that people buy long-term care insurance. That's why people buy this life long-term care, but perhaps they object to the use it or lose it aspect of traditional long-term care insurance. So I don't know if any of you have read about this or looked about it, but I wanted you to know about it. And what's also interesting, we need different types of insurance at different times in our lives. And so what we're finding is people with existing life insurance or annuities that have been sitting there with some good gains, some good interest rates back in the day, and that's their rainy day fund, perhaps for long-term care. They're not going to touch it. They don't need it for retirement income. Those annuities, but if you use that to pay for care, you're going to pay taxes on the gain as it comes out. And so you can do 1035 exchanges of these existing annuities over here, put it from one pocket to the next one over here. You own a different annuity that has tax-qualified long-term care insurance wrapped into it, and then if you draw from it to pay for care, it comes out tax-free. So there are all these different solutions out there, and we just highly advocate that you think about it and have a plan. And there's no one right plan. And then when you design a plan, there's no one right way to do it. but it's smart to have a plan for your family. So if I own a policy and I need care, my policy actually helps my husband and my kids, I really believe, more than I, because I'm not going to be filing my claim. And my policy will help them have an open-ended ability to look at various settings and have a way to pay for it. So that then they just have to worry about my health. They don't have to worry about my finances, in theory, depending on how I design my policy. Not everyone can look into long-term care insurance or any of these products. Sometimes health totally gets in the way. And so you have to be, somewhat healthy to purchase any of these solutions. And if you're not, and you are actually uninsurable, it is all the more reason for your healthy spouse then to look into this, because now we already know you're going to be paying for care out of pocket, and what's left for your spouse if he or she needs care. So I kind of look at it I help people look at it that way, because a typical, kind of a knee-jerk reaction when one finds out they're not insurable is, oh, well, okay, we're done talking, and the other spouse is all of a sudden not talking about this either. So I always suggest that it's probably even more important for the insurable spouse to then look into this. Yes? Well, there are some blatant uninsurable situations, like a diagnosis. The neurological diagnoses are like Parkinson's, if you already have Parkinson's, or MS. Sometimes it's medications. It's not the diagnosis, but it's the medications that are taken. You're uninsurable even if you're going to have knee surgery until you get through your knee surgery and there are no complications and you're done with physical therapy, So sometimes it's uninsurable, always uninsurable. You're going to always be uninsurable. Sometimes it's you're uninsurable now, but maybe we could talk in 9 months and that kind of thing. Yeah, ask questions along the way. That would be fine with me. Something that I did put in the middle of your table too, as I maybe pique your interest in learning, is, I understand you have existing relationships with insurance people. So, you talk to those people if you'd like. We are long-term care specialists. All we do is long-term care planning. I don't sell disability and mutual funds and life insurance, So we like to think, and I think we are right. We are specialists in this area. Typically, I get on a team with other insurance agents who say, "Hey, you know what? You do this for me, and you be part of my team. I don't want to do all this. It's a bit tedious, actually." I find my nursing background is very helpful when I talk to people ahead of time, because I don't want to lead anybody on a wild goose chase. So I ask all these health questions ahead of time, and because of that, unlike perhaps somebody else that says, "Oh, let's just fill out an application, see if you're insurable." And then you run around with a decline on your record and you can never get it. Instead, we do a ton of pre-screening ahead of time, figure out, should you apply at all? And if not, then we're truthful about that. Or making sure that if you could apply, we just do it in the right timing so you don't have a decline when, we should have known. And we should have done it a year from now. Because the next time you apply for long-term care insurance, the question is always on every application, have you ever been declined, rated, or, And then if you say yes, they're pretty much shaking their heads a lot of times. But anyway, if you do want more information from me specifically, then you can fill this form out and get it to me either via email or mail it to me, and I will give you a call and talk to you about this topic. I want to get back to the tax for the business owner. You'll see in the middle of that page in the farm case study that you can deduct premiums, and based on your age, it shows you how much you can deduct of premium per person. So that is there for you to know about. And the limits are there except if you're a C Corp. And then C corporations have no limit on how much they can deduct. So sometimes C Corp business owners like to look at a 10 pay where they pay for 10 years and then they're paid up. Those premiums, of course, are steeper because you're going to crunch them over 10 years and be paid up, or 20 pay. There aren't too many of those out there anymore. But because we work at a brokerage firm and I can shop around for people, everything I learn about you helps me get you to the right product for you. So I'm not, we at Newman, there are several of us that do what I do. We're not trying to put one shoe on everybody's foot. Another thing for you to know about Newman is that Thrivent actually purchased Newman 3 years ago now so we're a subsidiary of Thrivent. So many of you have heard of Thrivent probably. And we can also then represent the Thrivent plan and product, whereas other people can't unless you're a Thrivent rep. So we were happy to get that on our menu of solutions as well. So I've talked about the different settings, the costs of care. Why would people look into long-term care insurance? Why wouldn't they? A big objection to long-term care, a couple of them are, and you maybe have them in your head. Well, if I never need it, that was just a waste of money, my premiums. And I always mention to people, think of it as all the other insurances in your life. You buy disability insurance, maybe you've got homeowners insurance. You don't buy it because you just can't wait to have a fire and you just can't wait to become disabled so you can use your DI, and it's the same thought. But if that is definitely an objection, then there are these life long-term care solutions that are kind of interesting for people to look at. Or another objection might be premiums are not guaranteed, and you've read all these nasty articles about people that own long-term care insurance and their premiums went up. So as you can imagine, if I've been doing this for 17 years, I'm helping people with those premium increases. And when I do that, I help them look at their current plan. Okay, if you were to buy it new with the growth in your policy at your attained age, here's what your premium would be compared with your premium increase, and it's just completely. People I say just pat yourself on the back that you purchased it when you did, because even with the premium increase, it's so much less than it is if you were going to buy it outright now at your attained age, and maybe you've lost your health along the way, etc. So, but again, the life long-term care products have guaranteed premiums. So, I'm not sure what just fell down, but anyway. Oh, okay. So anyway, I don't know if any of you have stories about your premium, but the reason premiums went up is because these products were grossly underpriced. Those actuarials did not know how to price long-term care insurance. They looked at disability insurance because it's more about morbidity versus mortality, right? So they didn't look at life insurance. The actuarials looked at disability insurance, made assumptions on long-term care pricing based on DI. And now what they know is disability insurance has a 6% lapse ratio. So 6% of the people buy it, drop it. That's great for the insurance company. They've got these premium dollars there to invest, and they're never going to have to pay a claim on that. But now they know, because now we've got claims information, and long-term care insurance has been around so long now, that now the actuarials know that there's a 1% lapse ratio, not a 6%. For long-term care insurance, which means they've got a lot of business on the books with having to pay potential claims, and they completely underpriced now because they've got also claims information. So those are reasons for some of the premium increases that you have read about or maybe experienced. I think that is kind of what I wanted to talk to you about. I mean, I know that this topic becomes, really more of a personal one. And for me to really become effective with people is to visit with people, and if they're married, work, with both people, and talk about your family history. And if you, bottom line, long-term care insurance protects your assets. So then the question with people is, why would you want to protect your assets? And everybody has a different reason. Sometimes it's to save the farm, save the cabin, family cabin, not burden the kids, protect the lifestyle of the healthy spouse. and everyone has a different reason. Now, something that you might not know about, remember when we talked about medical assistance, and if you need care, you have to become impoverished down to $3,000 before medical assistance kicks in the state of Minnesota. There's something called the partnership program, which I don't know if you've heard about, but the government is trying to incentivize Americans to buy long-term care insurance, and most people don't know about this partnership program, but there was a law that was passed in 2005 called the Deficit Reduction Act, and at that point, this partnership program was part of that. And it's a dollar-for-dollar asset protection incentive that the government is saying, hey, if you buy long-term care insurance, and if you've ever looked into it, you buy a bucket of money, and it's going to grow over time if you have some inflation protection on it. And let's say your bucket starts at $250,000, maybe between you and your spouse. Who knows? You can design it however. And down the road, maybe you've owned it for 30 years and you've had 5% compounding, and now it's worth $1 million. You're combined between the two of you, or $750,000 or whatever it is. But this partnership program is saying, hey, if you buy long-term care insurance and you use it to pay for care, and you exhaust it, let's say, because you can no longer buy unlimited plans. I used to be able to sell those. Let's say you've exhausted $750,000 of long-term care insurance dollars, and you had this great plan, but you outlive it. And so then you start paying for care out of your pocket, and you start that spend down regarding medicalists. You spend down. But instead of spending all the way down to $3,000 before you could apply for medical assistance, you could stop the spend down when there was still $750,000 in your estate, if that's what your insurance had been worth, and still apply for medical assistance up here if you wanted to, and say, and keep $750,000 in your estate if that's what you went through with your insurance. So it's a dollar-for-dollar asset protection incentive called the partnership program, and it's a partnership between the federal and state government, the insurance company, and the policyholder. So that's another thing to know about, and you can Google it. I can email you information on it. But if you're considering self-insuring a long-term care event, you could Google this actuarial firm called Milliman, actuarial consulting firm. And what that firm is telling people is that if you want a 95% chance of self-funding a long-term care event because of the projected cost of care, you should be able to set aside $500,000 to $750,000 per person, if you're in a couple situation, per individual, and not touch it, and not use it for anything else, and then that's your rainy day fund for long-term care. And so then you ask yourself, is that what I want to do? Do I want to set aside $500 to $750 and not touch it? And then if I don't need it, it can go to my heirs, and do I have the self-discipline to not use that money for other things, et cetera? So I think that's an interesting statistic, the 95% chance, and then the dollar amount for you to know about, and you can Google that Milliman actuarial firm as well. So I'm going to stop talking and just ask if anybody has any questions or comments or wants to refute anything I've said or anything. Yep.
Any advice on, when we talk about the financial impact, even if you have the money, there's also the emotional impact of long-term care and having to care for your parents or care for a spouse. Any suggestions on how to plan for that so it's easier, easier for your kids when the time comes for them to do it?
So something I forget to talk about with these policies is that built into the policies are some language about the policy pays for what's called a care coordinator to come in and coordinate the care, and it's an RN from wherever you live, from a home health agency typically, and it's not a insurance company's RN. This helps the kids very much as far as, because it's a local nurse, the person comes in, assesses you. If you're trying to stay at home, they know all the home health agencies in your area, he or she. If you're looking at assisted living, that person knows and can tell your kids, here's where you can look, and here are the costs of different settings. But the family dynamic thing is really what I cannot emphasize enough. And if you have a plan and you have a way to pay for it, and it's not their potential inheritance, I'm not trying to be smart alecky about this, but as kids, we look at our parents' money. I guess everyone looks at it differently depending on our situation. And to spare family dynamics, it is very helpful to have a plan. And I don't know if that's kind of what you're talking about. But the emotional part of caring for a family member, a lot of times it's the daughter, the daughter-in-law, and the wife that are doing a lot of this care. And I'm not pointing fingers. It's just kind of not, and it's not always the case. But then the brothers and the husband, and that can become, we get a little resentment sometimes in that way too. And I will say, my brother lives in Texas, and my mother's in my backyard, and he tries to be helpful, but I'm doing it. And he comes and helps as much as he can, but her policy is helping both of us, make decisions for my mother, and we just don't disagree because, yep, she's got the money, yep, hire more care if that's what she needs, and that's what we do. It's peace of mind for sure. And I don't know if I addressed your question, but maybe you have pointers you wanted to say.
The emotional part is much more difficult, even when you have the money, dealing with those inner family issues.
Yeah.
And I think the challenge is nobody wants to sit down and talk about it before it happens. And then the emotions are so high, you can't have a good conversation about it without everybody getting all emotional and worried about the money or worried about this or that or care. It's almost like you also need to have a counselor available or a mediator for the family members to help them through the problems that they're dealing with it.
I agree. And because of what I do and what I did as a nurse, that kind of has been me, but a lot of family members or a lot of families don't have someone that works in the healthcare field and that knows insurance, So when we sat down with my mom's husband's adult children, yeah, they didn't know, they don't know anything about any of this stuff, and why would they? They don't deal with it. They've never learned it, and then we have to all learn it together the hard way. Yep, family dynamics can really be spared if there's a plan in place ahead of time. Thank you for your points. Yep.
And on that note, I think just having gone through this transition with my mom had a very thorough advanced health care directive, and that was very helpful when there was varying family opinions on what should happen next, and we would refer back to her advanced health care directive, which was her wishes. And so it really helped that family piece, because it was then we were not focused maybe on our own opinions, but maybe on what my mother's preferences and written and very specific wishes were. So advanced health care directives are really, we found them to be very helpful.
Yeah, that often goes along with this topic when I meet with people. Maybe they're looking into this and they haven't done that yet either, and then they do their will at the same. It's all kind of goes together. But advanced directives, yeah, very important, and it's really helpful if it's not just a verbal, like my mother telling me and she forgot to tell my brother, and it's not in writing, and yeah. I don't know if anyone has any objections to long-term care planning that they want to share or ask me about, but I know I had an hour and I wasn't sure if I'd use up the whole hour or not, so yeah.
Generally speaking, what price difference between a hybrid policy and a regular long-term care? Are they comparable, or is one a lot more than the other?
If you want the most bang for your buck for long-term care, the long-term care monthly benefit and your benefits, you do buy a standalone long-term care policy as far as the premium and the monthly benefit in your bucket of money. But if you really object to that use it or lose it aspect of it, and you look at life and a long-term care, it's a bit more expensive because now you're covering two risks. You're covering potentially a life claim or a long-term care claim. It's going to pay for something. So with the life, you can put in a lump sum. You can pay the life long-term care, and you can no longer you can no longer fund a traditional long-term care insurance policy with a lump sum. I used to be able to sell those too. So that the underwriting is strict for both. So you have to be healthy enough to buy either one. The annuities with the long-term care have the least strict underwriting, but there's still some underwriting. Yeah, so I often help people look at a traditional and then a life long-term care. That seems to be what people really want to see now. And then they get to decide. It is a bit more expensive to buy the life long-term care.
And then is there a cap on the dollar amount on a long-term policy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So no matter whether it's a lump sum or a 10-pay or 20-pay or life pay premiums, you can design it in so many different ways. But with the life long-term care, you can still buy unlimited pots and an unlimited plan for long-term care. So then that premium is more expensive, obviously, than a 6-year plan that would pay for 6 years. It's really interesting. I mean, these insurance companies, they know that this risk is out there for all of us as we live to be old and frail. And what are we going to do as a country if so many people don't plan and their plan is to go on medical assistance? It's just not sustainable to our kids. We don't have enough taxpayers under us. Yeah.
Talk about the difference between care you get on medical assistance versus non-medical assistance paid for care.
Yeah. So it depends on the setting, actually. So, when I was the director of nursing at this place called Jones Harrison Residence back in the 90s, okay, the landscape has really changed since then. And we were not all private pay. So no one there got treated any differently, no matter what they had for funds. And our nursing assistant, nobody knew what their financial situation was, except some of us in administration, But what's happened since then is there is a moratorium in the state of Minnesota on skilled nursing home beds. And that is why, whether you know it or not, but that is why assisted living has sprung up. Because you cannot build a nursing home anymore unless you transfer beds from this one over to this one. You can't add beds, certified beds. And because medical assistants thought, let's keep people at home longer. It's cheaper to keep people at home longer. So now what's happened is assisted living has sprung up over the 25 to 30 years. It's not as highly regulated as the nursing home. And therefore there aren't the staffing requirements. So you can go into a lovely assisted living facility and you can hire all this care according to this sheet of paper, but then they can't find enough help. That's true anywhere too. So we've got staffing issues everywhere. But medical assistance, if a person ends up on medical assistance, is really now with many assisted living facilities are all private pay. And I have worked in one before where when I started doing this, I did that too at the same time. And my role there was a marketing person, and I had to the place full and do the tours and all that, and then counsel people as they were running out of money. And so we had to tell people, these sweet women, usually 92 years old, they've lived there for 5 years, here are their friends, and now they have to move. So when you're on medical assistance and you're in assisted living facilities, sometimes you have to move if they're all private pay, or you have to prove when you move in that you can be private pay for at least 2 to 3 years. Because medical assistance is not a good payer in assisted living facilities, and it's not a good payer for home care. So if your goal might be to stay out of the nursing home, you really want to remain private pay. So, we are becoming a country in the long-term care world of the haves and the have-nots. And I don't know if you have experience with, so in a nursing home, the staff really, it's really not that the staff is going to consciously give less care to someone if they know their finances. It's just that nursing homes are so underfunded and they can't find help. So anyway, I think robots are going to take care of us someday, and you want a policy that talks about emerging trends, and we sell those, and you want an alternate plan of care if you're purchasing some of these newer plans that addresses that issue. Like, what if there's a way of delivering care that we don't even know about right now? With my mom's policy, well, it's not going to pay. She doesn't have that language in her contract, but the contracts we work with now do. So if there's an alternate plan of care in your contract language, and robots, let's say, are part of your care plan, and it's mutually agreed upon by you, your doctor, and the insurance company, it might be paid for. That's my long answer to your question, but if there's experience with a scenario that I completely know about with home care and a medical assistance not being a good payer, I had a charge nurse, the evening shift, single female her whole life, much older than I, and so when she became old and frail and not working for me anymore, or for us, she was my friend, and I went to see her. And I watched her age in place. She was a very stubborn woman. She was not leaving her house. And so she paid for care and ran out of money. So now she was on medical assistance. And absolutely, and she was very with it, so she could not be just pulled out of her house by her nieces and nephews, you know. And so she was smart enough to know what to do, because she was a nurse as far as the care piece. And so because medical assistance would only pay for 7 hours of care at home, and she needed 24, for all these different reasons, she had a nursing assistant come at 11 in the morning and would leave like at 7 at night, if that was 7 hours of care, and do everything that was possible during that 7 hours, and then get her ready for bed at 7 at night. And she would lay on the couch and have a commode right here, which eventually she couldn't even get off the couch because she couldn't walk to the bathroom. And she would lie there until 11 in the morning, incontinent, actually, and it was all about money. It was all about the lack of money. So, I mean, I could tell you a lot of stories about that from my experience as a nurse, not as a insurance agent. Well, the partnership so the hybrid products don't qualify for that. So it's just the standalone long-term care policies, and they automatically qualify if you build them with the correct inflation protection for your age. Because there are four main choices when you put together a policy. What do you want it to pay on a monthly basis? For how long do you want it to pay? What's your inflation protection? And then they all have like a waiting period or a deductible. Maybe you pay for 90 days or 30 days first before your benefits kick in. But your policy will automatically qualify for the partnership program if you have even just 1% compounding on your benefits. Trying to keep up with the projected cost of care, trying to keep your plan meaningful over time. And the most expensive moving part out of those four, as you design your policy, is the inflation protection. So, but that in and of itself then qualifies your plan for the partnership program. I love the questions. Thank you so much. Okay. If there are no more questions, should we wrap it up? I could go on and on. I have a lot more to say, but it's a heavy topic. Thanks for your time.